I'm Jonathan with iVol Live. Today, our agenda is to spend most of our time talking about the sentiment analyzer tool within iVol Live. Kind of as we all know, even if you're just starting your trading journey, sentiment really is an important factor in pricing. And so we're going to cover how to use that tool within an iVol Live. We're also going to use a couple of our more recent updates, to highlight the tool. So we've just added some recent, new markets and some new kind of cool features and shortcuts that I'll use throughout the webinar to kind of hammer those home. We did get a few questions before we went live today, so I'll incorporate those questions into the webinar. And if I don't cover anything, feel free to put the question in the chat box at the end, and I will cover it then. A few more here. Like I said, these Tuesday sessions tend to get pretty busy. So if you hear me pause momentarily, it's to let some new folks in. So again, welcome to the new batch. Today is Sentiment Analyzer Day at iVol Live. I'll be your tour guide. My name is Jonathan, and then I just logged in prior to hitting go here, so that way you can see what the experience looks like from a user standpoint, especially if you just joined us with iVolatility. So here we go. Let's go ahead and kick off. When you join iVol Live, for the first time when you log in, you'll have this friendly concierge welcome you to the club. So, here are the different ways to access the key tools. Every Tuesday, we cover a different tool. So last week, I covered the P&L calculator in depth. This week, we're focusing on sentiment analyzer. Next week, we'll probably do something, maybe the stock monitor within iVol Live. But the point is these Tuesday sessions are great because we spend an hour or so just focusing on one key tool within the platform. These are how you access those tools. You can expand, contract that view as you desire. So here we go. This is iVol Live, kind of the beating heart of the platform. This one's important because it shows you. Just go ahead here. There we go. This one's important, this iVol Live tool, because we'll start there today, and then we'll kind of flow to everything else. So for an example, iVol Live, this is where we create our watch list, we run our scans, we look at some of the initial charts and fundamentals, and then once we have a trade in mind, we kind of flow to stock sentiment, then we flow to P&L, and then if we want to kind of amp the trade a bit, we go to real-time spread scanner. And if we want to back test anything, we go to data download. So that's why this kind of flows from left to right. Here we go. And then if you ever need us for anything, we're available at support@ivolatility.com. So if you think of a burning question that we don't cover today, we are always available there. And if you haven't registered yet for iVol Live, I'm going to post the link in a bit within the chat room, so that way you can get going with a free 7-day trial. I know we have a couple maybe that haven't formally registered yet, so I'll throw that in the chat as soon as we have everybody logged in here. So now I'm on the dashboard. Latest news. This works 24/7. It combs the market and finds interesting tidbits. So anybody that's been on these before has heard me say, when I'm drinking my coffee in the morning, this is the first thing I read. And you'd be surprised. I get a couple trading ideas typically each week from these short little paragraphs, because time is precious, and it helps me kind of analyze the market quickly with what's going on under latest news. Now that contrasts with news and research. So news and research, this is what we're putting out internally at iVol Live, with our trading and our editorial coverage. And so what you'll typically see is we'll announce new additions to the platform. So in this case, on July 10th, we announced that we've added the Brazilian B3 stock exchange to iVol Live. We have many users kind of requesting that, and so we incorporated that into the platform. So I'll pull one of the stocks from the B3, for our some of our examples today. So you can just come here and you'll read all the highlights, and then typically we like to have a video, that shows how to use it. So if you clicked here, this would give you a quick, 5-minute demo on how to use the tool. In this case, how to use the B3 exchange. Here's how you would register for upcoming webinar, which everybody here successfully did. And then again, there's the free trial. So, this is a really good spot to find, the latest news and also trading ideas, because, when you're looking for potential trading ideas, it's important to kind of know, I think, what's going on with markets and have it distilled down into like actual bite size, actionable steps. And so in this case, what we put out, our most recent piece, we were tracking Amazon, fresh off of Prime Day, which was just a massive, massive day and really week for Amazon, so we highlighted that it accounted for nearly 60% of all e-commerce sales. Here we have a chart, Amazon versus Walmart, which is really neat that we pulled from Ivo Live. We've been covering the strength in tech. So we'll kind of highlight that a bit today as well. So Broadcom just hit, all-time high, so we featured that using a chart here from Ivo Live. Again, I'll show that within Eyeball Live. And then Domino's Pizza also was a very good performer last week, at the end of last week, because it announced a deal with Uber Eats. So we show here, this is price versus, volatility. And then we talk about how to play it, right? So all this information is great, but how do you actually use it to create some potential trades? So that's what that section is all about. And again, that was here under news and research. I want to jump ahead now to Ivo Live. So what I'll typically do is I'll review all of this, for 5 to 10 minutes every morning, make sure I'm up to speed. And then I hop into Ivo Live, because within Ivo Live, this is where we'll create, kind of our hit list that we want to do further research on. So what you'll see here is when you click on Ivo Live, you default to the custom scan tab, and it's called custom scan because you're able to add all kinds of fields to the scanner. So one question that we got before we went live today is, how do you add or take away from the column settings? And this is how you do it. You click on this gear icon and you can see this is everything we have available to filter through. So we can have a column that shows you the 10-day delta skew, or the 30-day 10 delta skew, right? That's a mouthful. 52-week high, 52-week low, ask, average option open interest. You can see this is alphabetized. Anything in green I have is showing display. Anything in red obviously is not displayed, but you can see there's dozens of different categories. So depending on if you're a short-term or a long-term trader, you can have, an IVX of 1080, right, over 1,000 days, or you can have it, as small as 14 or 7 days. If you like to monitor, short-term moves and structure short-term trades, so this is a really good tool. Depending on your trading style, you can have whatever you'd like display, here in these columns. And once you have it displayed, you can see what the way to read is always from left to right here. So we're screening all instruments within the S&P 500. And then these are the categories. These are the different columns, that are displaying. And then, you can sort in ascending or descending order. So again, as I'm looking for potential ideas to then run through the sentiment analyzer, kind of the first things I do is when I come to Ivo Live, I'll do a quick, these are not custom scans, these are preset scans. So they're super simple. All you have to do is click on them and they'll automatically run against a certain group. So this is all USA. We did just add Brazilian Stock Exchange. So now, with a couple mouse clicks, I see the top 20 names in Brazil by volume. And Vale, V-A-L-E, you can see the nomenclature is a bit different. In the Brazilian exchange, it's foreign, it's not US. So they put a number and then a letter, a dash and a letter to signify, what class of stock you're looking at. But in this case, Vale trades in the US and in Brazil. It's big, minor. And I think it's a great example for us to use today. So for reasons that I'll explain. But again, in a couple mouse clicks, you could see where the top volume is for any of the exchanges that we cover. All US, Canadian, Brazilian, European, German, Russell 2000, if you like the smaller names, TX60. You just need to specify your group, hit the scan. Here's the top 50. And then go from there. So typically I'll jot down a name or two, that are interesting with top stocks by volume. Vale in this case is one I want to look at a little bit deeper. Implied volatility mean versus 20-day historical volatility. This is another place I get some really good trading ideas because what this is looking at is future, IVX looking into the future 30 days out versus the past, which is 20-day historical volatility. And then I can run this against whichever group. In this case, it's the S&P. I like to come over here to this column and I look for anything above 2, because that tells me that IVX is 2 times higher than implied volatility. So in this case, we have these, handful of names. Actually, we have, of this 20, 19 of them are trading above two. So I always find a couple interesting ideas to dig deeper on. So I can jot this down. And then IVX historical range. This is like a 52-week range for a stock. So you have, your low. So this is AT&T, T at the top. The low for IVX for AT&T this year has been 1831. The high's been 3845. So you can see the AT&T, something's happening here, right? It's had a spike in its implied volatility. It's trading with an implied volatility percentile of 99.6. So this means 99.6% of the time over the last year, AT&T has been trading with a lower implied volatility, right? And lower IVX. So something's going on with AT&T, something's going on with PARA, Tyson, Verizon. Looks like something's happening with telecom. The fact that AT&T and Verizon are in the top 5, that tells us a lot. And again, you don't have to know anything other than running that scan to know something's happening, which is why these scans are so useful. IVX changed from yesterday. So what this is telling you is where's the action now? So this scan I was running was against the Dow, and it's telling me within the Dow, here's the biggest change. So Microsoft's having some spikes in its implied volatility. So is Cisco, so is Walmart. So these are also very good place I find, names, because this is the data. This is, not somebody's opinion. This is saying what's actually happening with the underlying. So then typically what I'll do is I'll come back here to this custom tab, because what I like to do is create a new group for these ideas to explore, further. So I could say July, let's do this. So it's at the top, 71823, sentiment, analyzer ideas. Right, make sure I don't have any fat fingers here, and hit save. And so now it's going to start off as blank. Well, what I wanted to use is Vale, since we just added them with the B3 exchange. So all I have to do is click in, type in the ticker. Amazon was interesting from that editorial piece we're looking at. AVGO, Broadcom is hit all-time high. Domino's is interesting. And then we had Verizon and AT&T. Right. So those were some interesting ideas that just popped up. So, we spent about 10 minutes and we already have 6 names that are interested in potentially diving deeper. Let's say that as we do our research, let's say that we decide that we don't want to include one of these names in our category anymore in our new group. All we have to do is put a checkbox, throw it in the trash, and here we go. And then here is our different column settings. Again, I can add to or take away from those column settings, here. And if you know what you want, for example, dividends, you can come here and just boom, boom, you hit apply and it will apply to this custom group only. You can do save as default and it will apply anytime you create a new custom group. So there we go. And you can see you can get this as simple or as complex as you want in terms of how many fields you like. I'm a I don't know, sometimes mainly short-term and intermediate-term trader. So I'm looking at certain fields that are important to me, but depending on, if you're a longer term and you want to look at leaps, obviously you can adjust that, accordingly with whichever criteria you want to analyze further. But Vale, I think, is good because we've written about it a lot. We featured it and it ties into the B3 exchange that we've recently added to iVol Live. So when you click on a name, it's going to bring you here, so we have our fundamentals on the left. So these are things like price, IVX. Again, this is looking at the next 30 trading days. And then historical volatility 20 is apples to apples, because what this is looking at is the past 20 trading days, right? So even in a month, there's typically 20 trading days. So, HV30, HV20, that's why those are great apples to apples comparisons. And we can see with Vale, its IVX, even without looking at the chart, is higher. It's slightly higher than the historical volatility. We have our market cap, we have our price to earnings ratio. This was another reason why this popped up to me. It's fundamentally cheap, like the S&P is trading with a PE in double digits. Vale is trading at 324. So after about 3.5 years of earnings at the current price, Vale, it would account for the current share price, right? So that's a very cheap stock on a fundamental basis. Of course, we need to dive deeper before putting on a real trade, but that's partly what got my attention. You can see put and call volumes, COV and POV, it's about equal. So the market, so when I look at this, even before I look at the chart or any other scan, this tells me likely one thing, that the share price is probably very close to the implied volatility, because the market doesn't quite know or have an indication of which way Vale is going to break, up or down, which can make very, very compelling trading opportunities. So speaking of which, let's go to the chart. So this is another question that came up before we went live. How much data do you have as part of your iVol Live subscription? So we by default will go 5 years, up to 5 years worth of data. And that's not just price. This is price in blue here, Vale's price. Then green, we have implied volatility. So think about this. This is showing you price, implied volatility, and then historical volatility in orange. This is showing you that for 5 years, for every single date, going back 5 years. This is like a treasure trove of data. And it shows you this really significant relationship between price and volatility. You could see when Vale was crashing during COVID, here price goes down, implied and historical volatility was going nuts. So this inverse relationship, is at play. And then when Vale came out of that and spiked in 2021, like summer months of 2021, we can see volatility went down. So there's all sorts of things you could do here. You can see it's like a narrowing channel on this 5-year chart as well. There's all sorts of things you could do here, but if you're a leaps trader, maybe you like to look at the 5-year. Probably our most popular view is the 1 year and down. Like, it's great to get the bird's eye view from 5 years, but 1 year and lower, you can get a bit more granular. So let's see, that's 1 year, here's 6 months. For short-term and intermediate term traders, the most popular view is this 3-month. And that's typically where I fall. And you could see, look at that. It's, price here is now kissing implied volatility. And I kind of had a suspicion this would be the case regardless, just by looking at that prior screen. When I saw the fundamentals and I saw IVX, historical volatility, and I saw the put to call, put volume ratio and call volume ratio, I pretty much knew that these lines were almost going to be connected before putting up the chart. And sure enough, here they are. So what we can do here is we could play options artist, options Picasso. Like, I like to highlight this relationship because this tells me, this is an interesting trading setup. We can bet on price rebounding and going higher and implied volatility going lower, or we can bet on price dropping beneath implied volatility and implied volatility going higher. So, that would translate to 2 different trade scenarios. And so we can run both of those in today's webinar as our example. So this is a great trade setup that I like to trade all the time, where you see price and implied volatility kiss. And then again, we can go down to 1 month, 24 hours, and you'll see my circle, stay live right here. So for Vale, this is like an interesting trade setup to explore closer. What I like to do now when I have an interesting trade setup, before I jump into the actual options chain, what I like to do from here is I like to go to sentiment analyzer. So this is a good kind of teachable moment too. I've got 5 tabs up on my browser on Chrome for iVolatility. And the reason why I do that is I can have this save here, and then I can come to this other browser tab and I can, play with the sentiment analyzer. So when you come to sentiment analyzer, there's a couple different things. There's 2 main ways to use this. You could use this to run a scan and find ideas. Like, let's say we didn't jump into iVol Live and we had no clue what we wanted to trade. We could come here and we can run a scan, which I'll do before we finish today. Or if you already have an idea of what you want to analyze, most people tend to have at least 1 or 2 ideas that they want to run through the sentiment analyzer. All you do is you click on stock sentiment analysis, and this is where you can key in an individual name, right? That you want to dive deeper on. Quick aside, for all of these tools, we always have a service guide available. So never feel like you're swimming in the deep end, without a paddle or a life jacket. All you have to do is click on it. Everything's got a table of contents. You can Control F, and you can go to EMA if you want to learn more about that, CFI. So, we have these guides for all of our tools, and they're always available kind of in these upper corners. So That was another question that we had prior, and this is where they live. The service guides are available here. So moving on to Vale, since we're live here, we can go ahead and do a live service guide of the sentiment analyzer. And so when I'm in a rush, the first thing I look at is this top field, and then I'll skim the paragraphs below. So sentiment gives me a quick snapshot of what's going on with the stock, this column right here. So for Vale, we have moderately bullish, absolutely still. So moderately bullish, absolutely still. Okay, well, let's drill a little bit deeper. Bullish rank, what does this mean? So bullish rank runs from a scale of 100% would be absolutely bullish. So that means the stock's on fire, and it's going vertical. We saw this kind of with Domino's Pizza last week, as well as Broadcom when they hit their highs. And then you have minus 100%, which is absolutely bearish. So this is like, the stock's falling through the floor. There's not a single buyer left. That would be a minus 100%. So, 14.29, again, we're moderately bullish. Volatility rank, this is similar. It runs from a scale of minus, so 100% would be extremely volatile, right? So this thing is bouncing all over the place. Minus 100% would be it's still, like it's like a lake with no ripples, right? Clear water. Here at minus 85.71, we're at absolutely close to absolutely still, which is why we see this reading right here, because this is summarizing these two fields. And then as we go to the right, we have one buy signal, 0 sell signals, and 6 holds. So really, this is confirming everything we just saw in that chart we were looking at, right? Which is price and implied volatility have kissed. And now Vale is going to break either higher or lower, but right now it's stuck in neutral. And so if we take this paragraph by paragraph, this is going to tell you, the first paragraph will always tell you about, what its current underlying price is doing. This has nothing to do with options pricing, but this is what Vale's current stock price is doing. So, it's had a moderate daily swing, but nothing too crazy. HV stands for historical volatility. So the historical volatility term structure does not tell us whether the stock is likely to trend, so, continue bullish or revert to the mean. So we're undecided there. Calls and put volumes seem to be balanced, and we don't have a clear overbought, oversold. But what we saw was, calls and puts are almost exactly in line in terms of volume. So again, Vale's in this teetering point, right? Where it's in neutral until it breaks higher or lower. Same thing with the implied volatility term structure does not show any difference between long and short-term expectations, right? So technical indicators, these are great. From that prior view I just showed, you're able to add technical indicators. I'll show that before we sign off here, but these give you kind of the 3 of the most popular. So the first one it's going to tell you is the reading for the EMA and the exponential moving average. That's also here in visual form. So we could see we're slightly bullish on the EMA. Here you see this green arrow, this uptick. You don't really need to know how the sausage is made on the EMA, but it's just very simple to know. Green arrow means, right, that the stock is trending higher. Red would mean it's trending lower. Moving on, relative strength index, the 14-day RSI. That's probably the most common parameter for the RSI. And this is giving us no clear or consistent estimate of the stock strength or future price evolution. So you could see here on the RSI, we're almost, kind of dead in the middle. Whereas if Vale was above 70, I would be betting on a drawdown, on Vale to come back down, because you could see, anytime really any stock goes too far below 70, it's a matter of time before it retraces from the RSI. And then conversely, anytime a stock goes below 30, it's typically a good idea to look at some kind of bounce, some kind of potential bounce trade. And then the chalk-in money flow 21-day CMF indicator does not say whether the equity, so Vale, is in accumulation or distribution phase. So what that means is here's accumulation, here is distribution. So all this is saying is basically, is the money flow bullish or bearish? And you could see, we were bearish, right? But now we're kind of back at neutral, at 0. While we're down here, here's basic data. This is on the underlying stock, right? So Vale opened at $14.04 today, had a high of 14.13. Here's our low, a market cap. Now this will tell you any dividend information for those that enjoy earning dividends. Here's our correlation of the market. So Vale is not correlated to, S&P, Dow, NASDAQ. Here is, again, depending on if you're a short-term or a long-term trader, here's been the historical volatility for the last 10 days, 30, 60, 180. And then here, looking out ahead, 30, 60, 90, and 180 days into the future. Here's the IV index, and you can see, implied volatility is, a bit higher than historical volatility at present, which we saw in chart form earlier as well. The other thing you could do here as a trader, which is nice, is you can look at its probable trading range, right, for your stock. So in this case, again, Vale. So what this is telling us is that, tomorrow, the likelihood of Vale staying within one standard deviation, which translates to 13.44 a share and $14 a share, is 68%. The likelihood of it staying within two standard deviations. So here, you can see we went a bit lower and we went a bit higher here. That's 95%, right? Because this is a wider range. And then 3 standard deviations is even wider. And you can see we have about a 99.7% chance. And of course, this is tomorrow. So that's a long time frame, or excuse me, a short time frame. We were looking at a 3-month chart earlier when we were in Eyeball Live. So let's go ahead and recalculate that to 3 months. And what you'll see is our numbers have now all updated to the relevant standard deviations. You do not have to be a math major, to do that. Our system calculates that for you. And you can see those upper and lower bands have automatically changed. These are the share prices that we're talking about. And then here's the percentage probabilities. You can also do custom, so you could say, all right, well, 3 months from now, what's the likelihood of this thing being above 12 but below 15, for an example. And you can recalculate and it will give you that reading. So there's a 43% chance that will happen. So depending on what strike prices or what price range you're looking at, and depending on the time frame, you can really have a lot of fun playing around with these scenarios. So now we have moderately bullish, absolutely still. What I would do is I'd come back to Eyeball Live and I'd say, okay, this thing is moderately bullish. These things have implied volatility and price have kissed. This thing could go higher or lower, but since we're moderately bullish, maybe the trend's our friend. Let me analyze a potential bullish trade first. So then I'd come here. This is the options chain view. You can see we have all expirations. Again, if you only trade leaps, you can specify leaps. If you only trade short term, you could specify short term. I've been looking a little bit more middle of the road here, 1 to 3 months out. I'll leave this as all for now. You can also set a different mid price. So 1409, the mid price is going to default to the current spot price, but you can change this. If you like to do out of the money, you could use your mid price as 1750 for an example, and it'll show you the 5 strike prices around 1750. And then you could also, if you only do calls or you only do puts, you could specify that here. So moving right along, if we go a couple months out, an expiration that looks interesting to me, right? Because I think Vale will make this move by the end of the summer. So let's come out to September. September would be summer's past. Everybody's back at their desk. They're back from the Hamptons. They're trading away. So we should see, uptick typically in volume in September. So if I come to the September expiration, here's where it gets granular, right? So here's how I say, okay, this is kissed. We're moderately bullish. How would I analyze a potential bullish bet, right? So we could say, what about buying a call option? So if we look at, kind of an at the money call, those are trading, here's our bid and our ask. So 76.81. So an actual trade would probably happen in the middle, around 78 cents per share. If you're new to options, every option contract covers 100 shares. So this would cost, about $78. What's interesting here is we can really take a deep dive on every option that we cover. So this is the time skew for Vale at 14 a share. And what it shows is here's our call in green, here's our put in blue. And what is great about this is here's our implied volatility on the y-axis. Here's our maturities. So these are 3 days out, which is this Friday, 17 days out, 31, 45. And what's cool is you can see, implied volatility for puts and calls are very tight. And we saw this over here in this chart, like the market doesn't know where Vale is going to go. As we go further out, there's a big skew here. There's 15 absolute points difference 45 days from now on the implied volatilities for the calls and the puts. So this would mean the market makers think something's going to happen within this range. Right now, here they don't really know, but out here, there's a lot more. The puts are a lot more expensive than the calls. So this is a really cool chart I like to pull up just to see where the market's heads at as we go out on the expiration. Again, time skew. This is showing us how things are skewed over time. So I like to look at that. The other thing I like to look at is this magnifying glass. It's, the little subhead here is price and implied volatility history charts. So we could see here for this specific option, again, we're looking at the Vale $14 strike that expires on September 15th. We could see this is what happened today. I like to look at last price because it ultimately bid and ask are nice to know, but the judge, jury, and executioner is the last price. And we could see this option has, drifted higher throughout the day as the market's been open. Here's our implied volatility. So the price has gone up. Implied volatility has, kind of come down after the open, dropped from around 42 to where the current IV, implied volatility price is. And then we have our table. And the table is great because it shows you, it would show you the bid, the ask, the last, the implied volatility, and then the volume that a trade actually took place on. So that's another really cool figure. And you can see, for Vale, it's pretty liquid, but if you were trading a very illiquid stock or future, you could come here and see where the actual volume is as well. So once I kind of get a view on a granular level of the pricing, then it's all about probabilities, right? Because it's okay, well, how do I take all this information and make money from it? So I pull up the probability and the options calculator for Vale. Again, this is the specific expiration. Here's Vale's last price. You could play with that. Mine is updating, so I don't really need to play with that. But if you wanted to play around with different pricing structure, you could put that in. I like to leave it at the existing price because then I like to run hypotheticals on the existing price. Here's our time. This is our time to expiration. DTE is what you see that abbreviated as in our system. And now we need to put the prices. So, here we're buying an at the money $14 call. If we want to go bullish, it's going to cost us about, 80 cents. So to break even, I need this thing to get to 1480. So for my price one, I could say, what's the likelihood it's going to go above 15? Also, maybe I'm being too conservative. Maybe I should be buying a cheaper call option, right? If this thing can go much higher by expiration, the 16 strike would only cost me, 18 cents. So, $18 for the contract. So what's the likelihood that we'll be above 18 by September? That's always the trade-off. The closer to the strike, the more expensive it's going to be. The farther away, the cheaper, but also, the stock has to actually, hit that. We'd have to be at $16.18 to break even here for perspective. So we can see in this case, the system's predicting that Vale, there's an 84% chance Vale will be beneath $15 a share. So if I buy this call option, and I spend 80 cents on it, there's a shot I can lose, chances are I could lose all my money because we're not going to go above 15. I could say, what is about 1480, which is about break even here. And even then, this is not a good bet, to buy this call option. And then above price 2, 18, there is only a 1% chance that will be above price 2, this $18 a share. So excuse me, let me change that to the strike price of 16 a share is going to cost us $18. There's still only a 7% chance we'll be above this 16 per share September 15th. So neither one of those are good bets, right? It wouldn't make much sense for me to buy those call options. So I could say, well, what's another moderately bullish strategy? And that's selling a put, right? So if I'm selling the put, I go over here to the put column. If I agree to buy Vale at 14, I'd get paid right at like 90 cents. So $90 a contract to agree to buy it at 14. So I could say, what's the chance that I'll be put? What's the chance that Vale will be at 14 or below, right? By September 15th. And I can hit this green arrow. And there's a 69% chance that Vale will be beneath 14 at this expiration date. So although I'll earn this 90 cents, chances are I'll get put at 14. So my cost basis would be 14 minus 90. So I'd be in at like $13.10 a share. So then I could say, well, wait a minute, what if I sold the $13 put? So I want to take a moderately bullish trade here, but I'll sell the 13. You could see there's only a 50-50 chance I'll be put at 13. I'll earn less income, right? So it'll be about, 45 cents, $45 per contract. So about almost half the income, but also it's, only a 50% chance that I'll be put the stock on September 15th at expiration. So this is a really cool tool because, now I'm like, okay, I don't want to buy calls. Selling puts does look interesting. I'll keep that up and keep that in mind. And then run that through the P&L calc, which is we spent all of our time last week going through the P&L calculator, because that's how you can get really, really granular on a specific trade. This is giving us probabilities, and then P&L is going to give us potential risk and potential profit. The options calculator over here on the left, the way to think about this is how you could kind of play market maker, right? So Vale is an American style option. It's, obviously based in Brazil, but it trades on the American exchange, and it's treated as an American style, which means you can exercise it at any time. European style options, you can only exercise at expiration. So that'd be things like the VIX, for an example, is a European style option. Here's our last price. Here's our strike price that we've been analyzing. Here's our expiration. Here's our days of expiration. Here's the current implied volatility of this option. Obviously, the market doesn't trade in a vacuum. Neither does Vale, neither does this specific strike. So here you could say, well, what will happen if implied volatility goes from 34 to 44? What's going to happen to the pricing? And what this will do is we'll update all this pricing, for you. So you could see, our price, but when implied volatility went up by 10 absolute points, our price went to 89 cents a share. Right now, our price is only 44 cents a share. So it doubled with that 10% increase in implied volatility. So that shows you the huge impact that implied volatility has on pricing, which is what's great about iVol Live. You don't need to do any of that complicated math. It does it all for you. Here's interest rates. I always leave those blank. Who knows what the Fed will do? I don't, particularly enjoy guessing about the Fed, but if you do like that sort of thing, you can play with interest rates. You can also play chairman of the board with dividends here as well. You can see it's a foreign issuer, so they pay semi-annual. They don't play quarterly, like a lot of American names do. But that's where you would play market makers over here on the left. So for now, what's interesting about this trade is I like it. It's a 50-50 shot. 13. What I would do is I'd come here to our chart. Here's where implied volatility in the stock are kissing. And then I'd say, all right, well, am I comfortable owning this thing if it drops to 13? We can draw a handy trend line here. Again, we could play Picasso. We can make it thick. And again, depending on how much you like, you can make them dotted lines, you can make it bold. You can have arrows, you could have endpoints. There's all sorts of cool things you could do with these artist tools. So we'll do a whole webinar on that, actually, now that I think of it, because there's so many cool things you could do to mark up these charts. But basically, with that trade, it's moderate. When we're selling a put, we're moderately bullish. I could look at the price action here. Vale has dipped below 13 over the past 3 months, but it hasn't stayed there long. It's typically rebounded. So as long as I feel comfortable about this entry point, I will take it to the next level. And the next level is the P&L calculator. So I come here, again, I clicked on that, but I could have had a different tab set up here at the top that had the P&L calculator all ready to go for me. But in any case, all you need to do is type in Vale, and then we just need to go to the expiration, which is September 15th. And we need to go to our strike price, which was 13. You'll see that this will populate behind me. Again, we did a whole webinar on this last week, so I don't really want to spend too much time on it today, but you'll see here's table form. If Vale goes into to a certain stock price, here's what our P&L looks like. Here's what it looks like graphically. The blue line is our break even. Green line is where we're profitable. Red is where we're not. And then down here, you get the action to take. We're selling to open this particular put option. Here's our implied volatility, which we just saw when we were playing market maker. We tweaked it. You can also play market maker here. You can change volatility. You can chase the expiration. You can change the price that your broker gets you, if it gets you a better or worse price than 43 cents a share. So all of this you can change and tweak which we did last Tuesday. But this is where I'd go analyze it. And this is very easy for me because now I say, okay, 50% chance based on the probability calculator, I'm going to get put. And then if I do get put, but throughout the course of the trade, here's what my P&L looks like, right? My potential P&L. So that's how you take it from, our dashboard where we kind of got a list of ideas, Ivo Live where we created a custom group, sentiment analyzer where we analyze the specific stock, and then P&L calc where we measure the potential profit and loss of a trade. That's how all of these tools work together. And then just one advanced step that I had planned to show you was, Vale was interesting to me because here we go. I'm in the real-time spread scanner. I did this 2 Tuesdays ago where I showed how to use this super powerful tool. But since, really Vale could break either way, higher or lower. So when I have a trade like that, if you're a little bit more advanced, you could come to real-time spread scanner. You could choose the strategy you want to look at. So I did straddle, because with the straddle, what we're doing is we're straddling both sides of the coin. We have the same expiration and the same strike price for the puts and for the calls, obviously different prices, but we're straddling the same thing, expiration and strike price. And I can see, and then I could say, all right, well, I think this thing's going to break in the short term because it can't stay stagnant forever. So I filtered for expirations that are short term. If my thesis was long term, I would just do long term. But in this case, my thesis is this thing's going to break higher or lower in the short term. And then I just hit search. All of these options popped up, potential spread trades. And again, I mean, that's what's great about Ivo Live. It does all this complicated math, in seconds, which would take forever by hand or by Excel. And here we go. From here, I could sort by max return. I could sort by risk reward, depending on what I'm looking for. And it's going to give me these different scenarios that I could do. And that's a straddle. In our webinar on the real-time spread scanner, we covered all of these different strategies, from calendar spreads to diagonals to conversions to callers. So again, I don't want to go into the weeds, but when I have a trading theory where this thing's going to go higher or lower, one of my favorite things to do after I analyze a single leg trade is I like to come here to real-time spread scanner and then have some fun within this field. So, but going back, again, today's focus is on the sentiment analyzer. With Vale, today, we already had a couple stocks in mind that we were looking at. Vale was a great example because we recently added the Brazilian Stock Exchange, B3, to Ivo Live. Again, we already knew kind of what we were looking at, which is why we were here. But if you didn't know what you were looking at, or if you wanted to do a custom scan, remember how at the beginning of this webinar, we created that custom list. That custom list follows us everywhere on all of these tools. So we're able to run scans on it and here in the sentiment analyzer, here in the real-time spread scanner. So when you create a custom list, it doesn't just stay within Ivo Live Stock Monitor. You can bring that with you wherever you go. So in this case, here we go. Here's the 5 or 6 names that we created. And we can see if any of those 5 or 6 names show up as potentially viable based on whatever it is we want to screen for. So the way we run this screen is first you have to designate a signal importance. 2 is very important. 0 is you don't care. And then 1 is right in between. So here I just kind of preset it to we're looking for price change. We're looking for support resistance. We don't really care what the call put ratio is. We're looking for the EMA, RSI, and the money flow. Those are what's important for us. We only want to see stocks that have a share price above 5 and below 1,000. We only want to look at names that have a market cap above $1 billion and below 100 billion. And we only want to look at names that pay a dividend from 1 to 9%. I did 1 to 9 because what I found in my experience is anything double digits is destined to be cut at some point. So I don't even like to waste my time with them. I like to look at 1 to 9, but if I get put or if I own the shares, I do like to earn dividend. So that's why we put this criteria. If you're trading thinly traded names or like a foreign market, what you could do is you could specify the volume and the options open interest. So that way you don't see wonky, thinly traded names. And then you could do show top 20. Obviously, we don't have 20 names in this new list we just created today as an example. But if you're looking within the S&P 500, for an example, you can show top 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, or 200, right? And we hit save and search. We'll see. Okay, all right. There's one within that list, Domino's, that actually hits all of this criteria. And I just did that in real time. So you can see, without even knowing ahead of time, all of that crazy math just got done. And now we know Domino's is trading with this criteria and with these filters. So then what I could do is I could analyze Domino's, like I just analyzed Valet. And I could come here and I could really start digging deeper. I can look at its sentiment and then take this sentiment, this moderately bullish quiet, and then I could come to I've Alive, and then I could, pull up a tab for Domino's now, and I can start the whole process, over again of saying, okay, well, let's pull up DPZ, right? There's a lot of different ways you could do it. You could pull it up like that, or you could pull it up from your custom group over here, but I just keyed it in. And then now I can mark this. I could say DPZ, sentiment, analysis, and hit enter. And now I've named that tab. So now I know why I'm looking at DPZ, right? Like, why am I interested in this in the first place? Valet was B3, sentiment. So this is another cool shortcut we just recently added. And then you can see like Netflix, I was looking at a bare diagonal spread. So this is really cool because we're all busy. And so we can, label these tabs on why we're interested in that name in the first place, right? So that's how we could run a scan. And if we come back here, like that was a scan against our custom group. But of course, if we wanted to get a lot more results, we could run this against any of our presets. So if we ran this against the S&P, for an example, you're going to get typically a lot more results because you're running against 500 names instead of 5 names, And so here, if you had logged in and you had no idea what you wanted to trade, but you knew you wanted to look at things that were having a lot of different, price change action, that were moderate on support resistance, that were strong on the EMA, RSI, and money flow index, just by knowing that, you could hit search and you'll get ideas, right? Like here we got Free Power, Mac Run, another mining company, kind of like Valet, and just looking through this Corning, Orco. Yeah. So, I mean, even here, when I just ran the scan, there's 3 names that I personally would look deeper at, running based on this criteria. And again, you could do that, kind of on any of these names. And if you see something you like, okay, FCX looks interesting, right? Kind of plays into our Valet theme, then we can add that to our favorites, So here's our sentiment analyzer ideas, add to favorites, and now that's going to show up in that group. Here we go. So that just popped up, and then it'll take me back to my screen. And then from this screen, I can go anywhere I'd like. I've all live. One more thing I want to show here is another update we just added to make it easier to add names to your custom list. So again, here's our custom list. You can have as many stock monitor tabs as you want. All you need to do is hit that plus icon. So you can see you can add a stock monitor, futures monitor, charts tab. So we've done a lot of webinars just on charts. But anyway, if I just did the stock monitor, pull that up, you can see the default is the Dow, right? And then here's our custom group that we've been building. We just added Freeport McMoran based on our sentiment analysis tool. And then anything you like, Apple, American Express, whatever, you just hit the check mark and then select the group. There we go, add. And now we've made it so much easier to add to our custom group, because we can see here now, these names will refresh and those have been added, Apple and American Express. So that's very easy. Also, if you are currently having anything in a CSV format, whether that's Excel, Notepad, Word, whatever, you could just come here and you can add to group from file. You would just open the file from your computer or your device, select the group you want to add it to, hit add, and then those will populate. All you need is the ticker symbol, and the ticker symbol has to be in CSV format. So with that being said, that is the meat and potatoes of sentiment analyzer. I want to pause, see if there's any questions. I'm also going to put in, I know we have some folks that are not currently Eyeball Live users. So let me get to it here. I'm going to go ahead and put in this registration form in the chat for 7-day. So if you're not currently a user, you would just click on that link and you would follow it and you would register with us. Also, if you run into any hiccups, we're support at ivolatility.com. So that's how you would register. And then, if you have any issues, we're at support at ivolatility.com. Also, I'll have our team save this video, edit it, and then we'll shoot it out to everybody. And we'll have these links here as a reminder. And then if you have no clue how you got here in the first place, the best way to join our webinars is you come here from your dashboard, hit join, and then register. We'll post this topic tomorrow for next Tuesday. Do sign up in advance though, because we only have limited spacing per webinar to make sure everybody gets a good white glove experience. But that's how you get to it if if you don't recall how you got here in the first place. So we are about 8 minutes from 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to see if we have any questions kind of specific to Sentiment Analyzer, or if this was so thorough and you enjoyed it. That feedback is great as well, because we're always looking for feedback from our users and our viewers, so we can make sure we're covering the tools that are most important to you guys to create actual options trades. iVol Live is the engine that helps. It's the analysis tool, an engine that helps create the trade then that I execute, for example, in my case with my broker. But this is the analytical tool I use to do so. So any feedback is appreciated as well. All right. Well, looks like we covered all of that. I tried to incorporate the questions we had ahead of time into the webinar. So I appreciate everybody joining. If anything pops up afterwards, again, support at ivolatility.com, and we'll take care of you. So again, thanks for joining me on this Tuesday. This has been Jonathan with iVol Live. Recordings. We have access to non-members to past webinar recordings. Great question. We typically do not, but if there's a specific topic that you are interested in, shoot us a note at that support at ivolatility.com. Just send us the topics you're most interested in, and I can talk to the team about showing those recordings. But typically, those are available to only iVol Live users. So, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Just shoot a note to me, support at ivolatility.com, and with the topics you're most interested in, and then we'll take it from there. No problem. Great. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. Again, this is Jonathan with iVolatility. Until next time, happy trading.